In a time dominated by oppression, the people of Israel lived enslaved in Egypt, subjugated by the powerful Pharaoh. Egyptian culture was deeply marked by polytheism, where gods were represented in human and animal forms, and grand rituals took place constantly. Amidst this scenario of suffering and bondage, Moses emerged, a man of Hebrew origin, saved as a baby when his mother placed him in a basket on the Nile River, fearing for his life. Moses was found and raised by Pharaoh's daughter, receiving a privileged education but never forgetting his roots. His life was marked by a deep restlessness, a constant search for greater meaning, guided by a compassionate heart and a faith that, even amid paganism, remained devoted to the God of his ancestors. One day, while tending sheep in the desert, Moses encountered an extraordinary scene, a burning bush that was on fire but was not consumed. God's voice echoed from that sacred fire, revealing to him a grand mission to free the people of Israel from slavery in Egypt. Overcome with astonishment and fear, Moses questioned his own ability, doubting whether he was truly chosen for such a tremendous responsibility. He felt unworthy, weak, and incapable of confronting Pharaoh, one of the most powerful men in the world. His mind was filled with uncertainty. Who am I to carry out such a task? Perplexed by the calling, Moses sought to understand if it was real, wondering if it was a figment of his imagination. He questioned God, asking for signs to confirm his presence and his support. God then revealed miraculous signs: the staff that turned into a snake, the hand that became leprous and then healed, and the transformation of water from the river into blood. Even so, Moses still hesitated, fearing his inability to speak publicly. God, in his infinite patience, assured him that his brother Aaron would be his spokesperson, walking alongside him in the mission. After this period of intense dialogue with God and the confirmation of divine signs, Moses, with a heart full of fear but also conviction, accepted the mission. He decided to leave his peaceful life in the desert and return to Egypt, determined to free his people. With renewed faith, he set out with his family, aware that every step from that point forward would be guided by the mighty hand of the Lord. Moses understood that he was not alone and that, despite his limitations, God would perform the necessary miracles. Upon arriving in Egypt, Moses and Aaron presented themselves to Pharaoh, delivering God's message, "Let my people go." However, Pharaoh, with his hardened heart, not only refused but also increased the suffering of the Hebrews, making their tasks even more burdensome. The people, gripped by affliction, began to doubt Moses, questioning whether his intervention had only made things worse. Shaken, Moses turned to God in prayer, asking for guidance and strength to continue in the face of relentless opposition. Despite the hardships, God did not abandon Moses. He strengthened his alliance with Aaron and with the elders of Israel, who gradually began to believe in the mission. With each new challenge, God renewed his promises, reaffirming that he would free his people with a mighty hand. Moses also became a more mature spiritual leader, learning to trust not in his own strength but in the power of the living God, who began to perform increasingly grand signs. Pharaoh continued to resist, even after each plague that God sent upon Egypt. 10 plagues devastated the nation: water turned to blood, frogs, lice, flies, livestock disease, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and finally, the death of the firstborn. Each plague was a direct confrontation with Egypt's false gods, showing that only the Lord is God. Moses, even tempted to give up amid so much resistance, remained firm, fighting against oppression, against fear, and against the schemes of evil. The 10th plague brought deep pain to all of Egypt, including Pharaoh's palace, which lost his own son. Suffering overtook the nation, and a cry of sorrow echoed everywhere. At the same time, the Hebrew people also faced fear, uncertainty, and anxiety. Moses felt the heavy weight of responsibility, knowing that leading a multitude toward the unknown would not be an easy task. Yet, even amid the pain, hope began to rise. God then instituted the Passover, revealing to Moses that this moment was not only a physical deliverance but also a spiritual one. The blood of the lamb, marked on the doorposts of the Hebrews' houses, symbolized divine protection against the angel of death. Moses understood that his mission was not limited to leading them out of Egypt but pointed to something much greater, the formation of a holy, set-apart people who would live according to God's commandments. Finally free, the Israelites journeyed into the desert. However, they quickly realized that their faith would be constantly tested. Facing the Red Sea ahead and, behind them, Pharaoh's armies, who had regretted letting them go and now pursued them, fear overtook the people. They turned against Moses, crying out in desperation. But Moses, strengthened in his faith, raised his staff, convinced that God would not abandon them in this crucial moment. Finally free, the Israelites journeyed into the desert. However, they quickly realized that their faith would be constantly tested. Facing the Red Sea ahead and, behind them, Pharaoh's armies, who had regretted letting them go and now pursued them, fear overtook the people. They turned against Moses, crying out in desperation. But Moses, strengthened in his faith, raised his staff, convinced that God would not abandon them in this crucial moment. Then, before everyone, God performed one of the greatest miracles in history. A strong wind blew all night, dividing the waters of the Red Sea, forming walls of water on the right and left, and a dry path in the middle of the sea. The people crossed on dry ground, amazed and in awe of the greatness of God's power. This miracle not only physically saved the Hebrews but also definitively strengthened their faith in the God who led them. When the Israelites finished crossing, Pharaoh's armies attempted to pursue them, also entering the path through the sea. But, obeying God's command, Moses stretched out his hand again, and the waters returned with full force, covering and completely destroying the Egyptian army. This was the moment of the final confrontation, where God showed, once and for all, that no enemy can prevail against his power and against those he protects. Now free, the people of Israel rejoiced with great celebration. Miriam, Moses' sister, led the women in songs and dances, exalting the God who saves. The victory was not just over a human enemy but over all forms of oppression and evil. The people, who once doubted, now witnessed with their own eyes the care, love, and faithfulness of God. Their faith was restored, and a new cycle of hope began. Moses then fully embraced his role as leader and prophet. He led the people to Mount Sinai, where he would receive the tablets of the law, establishing a perpetual covenant between God and Israel. His legacy is one of obedience, courage, and unwavering faith. His story became an inspiration not only for his generation but for all future generations, shaping the spiritual identity of a people and influencing the course of human history. Although his mission was not yet complete, Moses experienced an unprecedented spiritual ascension. God spoke to him face to face, as a friend speaks to a friend. He became the mediator between God and the people, receiving divine instructions, laws, and commandments that would transform Israelite society. His reward was not only leadership but also deep communion with the Creator. This story is not just about physical deliverance but about faith, obedience, and trust in God. The exodus from Egypt represents the journey of every human being who seeks to leave behind spiritual prisons toward the freedom that only God can offer. Just as Moses was an instrument of deliverance, each person is called to trust, even when everything seems impossible. The story closes with a powerful reminder that when God is leading, no sea is too great to be parted.